listening to The Motherhood Experience, a podcast where you are a part of the conversation with moms, for moms, and by moms. Let's jump into this episode with me, your host, Val Kleppen. Welcome back. So glad to have you joining me on another episode of the Motherhood Experience podcast. Today, my guest is Madison Wetherill. We talked about so much. I'm going to encourage you to do this. I'm going to encourage you to listen to the episode and then go back and listen to it again and hear the topics that she is just really opening the door to. Conversation ebbs and flows, right? So she's talking, I'm talking, we're moving from topic to topic, but the answers she provided really went so much deeper than what she said. This could have been a 3-hour episode, honestly, but be proud of me. I reined it in. All right. I didn't turn it into 3 hours, but the way that she was answering the questions, I was like, this just goes so much deeper than what she's saying. And so you may have to listen to this episode a time or two. Also, if you are looking to be encouraged in how to level up your routine, especially with regard to meals, this is going to be an exciting episode for you. For healthy eating, and when I say healthy eating, I know some of you just shuddered, but healthy eating not in the sense that we've been programmed to think about it per se, just in eating in a way that makes us feel good, that makes us function well. I loved this conversation with Madison. I felt like it was a little different from some of the conversations that I've had recently because I felt like more of a student than a podcast host. And I don't even like to admit that I said that because she's considerably younger than me. I want to be the one teaching. Right? The Titus 2 woman, where the older women are teaching the younger women. But let me tell you, Madison took me to school. She took me to school in this episode. I hope you enjoy it. I hope that you check the show notes. Everything that we talked about is going to be linked there. You'll be able to find her social media links in there. You'll be able to find me. I hope, if I remember to put my social media links in there. We're always on Facebook and Instagram and over on YouTube. Please leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're watching us on YouTube, leave us a thumbs up. It's a lot easier to leave a little thumbs up on a video than a 5-star review. So I hear tell. Anyway, I think that's about all that I've got to tell you today. And so with that, let's launch into this amazing episode with Madison Wetherill. Well, Madison, I'm so pleased to have you joining me here on the Motherhood Experience podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to chat today and just hopefully share some fun recipes and all the things with your audience.
I can't wait to get into that. Why don't we start with ages of kids and stage of motherhood you're in?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have 3 boys and they are 9, 7, and almost 3. So I feel like I'm very much in the big boy camp and also the toddler stage. And there's a lot of things that are different and a lot of things that are the same, especially with having 3 boys.
3 boys. Already my heart rate just increased a little bit. Did you ever imagine life as a boy mom?
No, honestly. It's funny when I think back to being a child, thinking about I wasn't the type of girl who played with my dolls and played house. I'm sure I did, but I didn't really grow up super girly. But when I was pregnant with my first, I really, really, really wanted a girl. And at the time, I didn't want to find out what we were having. My husband, on the other hand, was like, no, I really need to know. And I'm so thankful that he did that because when we found out we had a boy, it was very shocking to me. And so it was really helpful having the rest of the pregnancy to get used to that idea and just start to imagine it. And now it's funny, when we had our third, we didn't find out again, or we didn't find out for the first time. And people kept saying, well, don't you want a girl? Don't you want a girl? And I'm like, I really don't. I want a boy because I know what to do with boys. Yes, it's a totally different level of chaos and a different level of loudness constantly. But now it's I don't know any different. And there's just something so sweet about watching them be brothers. And, I'm sure it would be amazing if he had ended up being a girl and it was something different. But now it's like I have accepted and embraced the boy mom and all of that chaos that comes with that.
Yeah, and chaos indeed, but it's a cheerful chaos.
Hmm.
Did you come from a large family, small family?
No, so I have one brother. He was 2 years younger than me, so we were very close in age growing up. But it's so funny. There are so many times that my boys do something, and I'm like, I do not remember my brother being like this. Like, I know that these are like typical boy things, but I do not remember any of this growing up. And I think part of it was because, it was a boy and a girl dynamic. My brother's also very introverted. I'm very extroverted. So we just did different things. So yeah, we had a small family. Even like my entire extended family is like 10, 12 people. It's very small. Um,
Wow.
I always wanted 4 kids growing up. I don't know why or where that came from. And so I always joke or try to remind my husband that when we were dating, we agreed on 3. When it came time to have the third, he was a little apprehensive, and now he's very happy we have our third. But yeah, for some reason, I always just had this idea, maybe even dream of like a larger family. And I remember like very clearly one time I was at an event and they were saying something about like, imagine your life in 20 years, like picture it, visualize it. And there was the clearest picture of 3 grown men sitting around my dinner table. At the time, I only had 2. And ever since that moment, I was like, yeah, we're going to have another boy. Like, I just knew it. And it didn't happen the way we expected it to or anything like that. But when we finally had our third, it was like, yep, this is the completed like family vision that God gave me at some point for some reason.
Oh, that's fascinating. And so cool too that like almost like a peek behind the curtain
Hmm.
into your future. What do you think it was that drew you to wanting a family? Did you have kind of a I mean, I know that you said you weren't really into dolls or playing house or things like that, but was it kind of a draw to family early on?
Yeah, I think growing up, my family was very close. So my like core family, my parents and my brother and I, we moved around a lot growing up. Like people always ask me if he was in the military, and I'm like, no, we just moved around a lot. And so we were kind of far from our extended family, my grandparents, who were in Arizona my entire childhood and still are. And so I kind of remember this, like, I guess, longing for a larger family. And then when I met my husband, his mom is one of 3, and then each of them had 2 or 3 kids. And so like when we'd get together with his family, it was just this very large gathering to me. And so I think even by that point I kind of had already established that like I always felt like I wanted another sibling. And so I think that's where the 3 or maybe 4 came from. And I don't know, it was one of those things. I just feel like I always wanted that. I can't remember a time where I didn't want that, if that makes
Mm,
sense. And I think part of it was just like my family was so close, but there was always this like it's just us kind of feeling because the
mhm.
extended family was kind of small.
Oh, I love that. What about like career aspirations and such? If you had visions of a family from a young age, did you have dreams of what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Yeah, so I've always tried to like think back and remember like when did this kind of shift, because I very distinctly remember my first corporate job. By that point, my husband and I had been married 2 years, I think. And we wanted to be further out from having kids. I'll just put it that way. We were thinking like maybe in 5 years, because we got married when I was 21. So I kind of was like, yeah, when I'm in my late 20s, like we'll start having kids. But I always felt like I wanted to be home with my kids. My mom,
Mm,
growing up, when I was really little, she worked outside of the home. So I was in daycares and things like that. And I don't remember that, but I remember her talking about it. And I remember the shift of her coming home and being around in my elementary school years. And while I was in like a traditional school setting, like I still remember she was always home when I got home from school. She was always involved in Girl Scouts and, all the things with us. And so I knew I wanted that, but I also was very, like, I wouldn't say career driven, but very achievement driven, if that makes sense. Like, I knew I wanted to do something more than, I hate using the word just, but quote unquote, just be a mom at home. And I had no idea what that was going to look like. But when I got pregnant with my first, I was actually let go from my corporate job 2 days after I found out I was pregnant. And at that moment, it was basically like, well, I could go get a job for 6 months and then quit because I know I'm not going to work and like send my newborn to daycare. Or I could try to make this online entrepreneurship thing work and see what happens. And it's been a very long roller coaster of a ride, but now I cannot imagine like having only one of those two things. Like it is so much a part of like who I am and even our family dynamic that I can't even imagine separating like being a working mom and also being a stay-at-home mom together
Yeah.
at the same time. It's
Yeah.
complicated to do that, but like I can't imagine it any other way.
Okay, there's like 18 different things I want to ask you about this because it seems to me, from my worldview lens, that getting let go 2 days after you found out you were pregnant was the absolute most blessing thing that could have happened.
Hmm.
However, I'm going to guess being let go 2 days after you found out you're pregnant was a little bit of a panic moment.
Oh yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that accurate?
Very, very much so. And that has just been a thread in our kind of our story and our journey over, we've been married. It will be 13 years this summer. And we've actually had that experience happen again with our third son when we were pregnant with him. My husband was let go from his corporate job, this time 2 months before we had our baby. And so, anyways, the long story short with that is that, yes, it was very much a like, okay, well, this is a very clear sign, like, this is what we're doing, but also this is very terrifying. And I have no idea how this is all going to work out. And we ended up moving to Arizona to be close to our family. And there's been so many twists and turns that have just confirmed that, like, that pivot and that huge shift was indeed exactly what you said. It was the biggest blessing. It started this life that we now know, started so many things for us that have now become just core to our like family. But I probably couldn't have written a story without like with less, twists and turns than we've actually experienced in our lives.
Wow. And so you had mentioned something earlier that I kind of want to ask about. You may not have an answer, and that's fine. But I was wondering because I never envisioned myself staying home with my kids until I delivered. And then
Hmm.
I was like, how can I leave this precious tiny baby? I don't ever want to leave her again. Like,
Hmm.
I always pictured myself, just working away from home, climbing the corporate ladder, all those things. What do you think the difference is? Now, I mean, for the record, I've been working from home for so long, I can't even remember how long right by now. But what do you think the difference is? Is it a generational thing? Is it an environmental thing where women are like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm going to work, I'm going to," and then having a baby and being like, "Oh my gosh, I don't ever want to leave this tiny little beautiful creature," to being like, no, you know what? When I have kids, I want to stay home with them. What do you think is the difference in that?
I mean, I think part of it is just nature. Like it's biological to like, for the most part, and I'm not saying this is everybody's experience, but I think we're wired to want to, as women, to care for our children, right? And we don't always have that option. We don't always have the ability to work from home or to do both. But I think for me, at least, my experience was in my corporate job, my first one that I had, I was very much like a square peg in a round hole. Like it just was
Mm,
not a good fit for me and for so many, so many reasons. And so I think when that happened, it kind of confirmed for me that it was going to look different for me than maybe like a traditional corporate job, stay at home mom. Like it was going to not be one or the other. And I was going to have to carve my own path to figure out what it was going to look like for me. But I do think it's a generational thing in a lot of ways because I think most of us grew up with a mom who either worked or stayed at home. And so, whether that was a good thing or a bad thing in either of those scenarios, we grew up with that as our example of what
mm,
motherhood looked like. And I think every generation takes something from the last generation that they're like, maybe I'll do this a little bit differently, or, I'd like to approach this in a different way. So, yeah, I think it's a complicated thing for sure, but I think a lot of it is environmental too, in the sense that there's so many options now. If you want to make both work, there are so many options out there. And especially in the online business space, like there's just a plethora of options for what it can look like for you. And I think if you're willing to, pursue that and seek something that is different and maybe comes with some risks of being different, you can find something that can be like the best of both worlds for your family and your situation. That makes sense.
yeah, yeah, I think fantastic answer. So we've we've hit around it a little bit already, but what is it that you do? What is your business? What are you doing online?
Yeah, for sure. So, I run a food blog that's called Cook at Home Mom. And basically, the premise of Cook at Home Mom is sharing very approachable, easy, healthy recipes for busy families. And I specifically put the busy family in there because I have spoken to so many moms and so many of my friends that are just struggling with making healthy choices for their family because time is not on their side when it comes to dinner time. And so over the years it's looked like a lot of different things, but going forward my focus really is around those like busy family dinners that can be nourishing and your family can love and doesn't put like all this extra weight and stress on mom, because the reality is a lot of moms are the people who are planning the grocery list and planning the meals and making the dinner and cleaning up, and you're doing all of that maybe alongside another career or homeschooling or something else that is taking up your time. We're not all just like sitting around and cooking all day. And so, yeah, Cook at Home Mom is just designed to be a supportive tool for moms who want to make good decisions and put yummy, delicious meals on their tables.
And did you start out with that 10 years ago?
No. So, well, yes and no. I originally started blogging in, I was what was considered like a lifestyle blogger. So at the time, it was a little bit of everything, a little bit of fashion, which is hilarious because I'm not really a fashion kind of girl, but I would like do a couple things with outfits and things. And then I might like throw a DIY in there, which I'm also not a DIY kind of girl. It was just like whatever is on the top of my mind, I'm going to write about today. And then over the years, it shifted into food. And, I alluded to like so many different changes that have come just in our journey. And one of those has been kind of, for me, just even learning to cook, because I didn't learn to cook growing up. I remember being in college and being like, I have a kitchen in my dorm. That's so cool. But like, I don't know how to cook anything besides mac and cheese. Like, what am I going to use this kitchen for? And then when my husband got added into the mix of that, then it was like, oh, there's two of us to feed now. And we probably can't survive off mac and cheese for the rest of our lives. And so, yeah, so over the years, it morphed from this lifestyle blog where I was sharing a little bit about everything to really sharing about food and the joy around food. And then as our sort of diet and lifestyle has cleaned up and we've done more of just like healthy, wholesome recipes, that's what I'm trying to help people with, because I know that is such a complicated thing for people. And I remember, when I started trying to like decide what is healthy and what are we going to eat for dinner and all of these things, it was just complicated. And that was 10 years ago, or 5 years ago at the least, when there was like half the amount of information out there. And now it's like the information's out there, but it's hard to sift through and figure out, who do you trust, what is healthy and what's not, what can I actually make with my particular like family dynamic. So now I'm just so passionate about sharing that and helping people, especially those busy moms, just make better choices. Because someone said this to me recently and it really stuck out. She said, if it's not planned ahead of time, we will all make the wrong choices. And I don't know that there's like a wrong choice when it comes to healthy eating, but I do think if we don't plan ahead, we might not make the best choices, or we might not make the choices that will serve our families the best. And so, yeah, just really trying to focus on that direction for Cook at Home Mom.
That is such a key point, and I don't want to gloss over it because are you familiar with Dave Ramsey at all? Okay, so I remember listening, or maybe it's in his Total Money Makeover book. I don't know. I've known about Dave Ramsey for many years. So it all gets kind of muddled together. But I know that there was a specific example of this mom who picked up her kids and she was just so tired. And after their activity that she picked them up from, she was like, whatever, we're going through the McDonald's drive-through, spent the debit card or wrote the check or whatever. And then she had insufficient funds. So that $12 McDonald's trip turned into like a $40, whatever it was. And so the lack of a plan not only fed her family probably a less than desirable meal option, but then cost her 30 plus more dollars than she intended to spend that night too, and got her in the hole until the next paycheck. So talk about the importance of planning, especially as a busy mom, when kids are in all kinds of activities and friends and social gatherings and work, whatever the case may be. How do you have the mental capacity to plan anything?
It's a great question. And I think I like to tell people that meal planning, eating healthy, like all of these things that kind of get factored into what we're talking about, they are all muscles that we have to build. And the reason it feels hard at first is because you aren't used to doing it. And, our brains are wired to protect us from things that are different, things that feel hard. And even though you might in your logical brain know eating healthy is something that you want it for your family, all the things, when push comes to shove and it's time to actually decide what to make for dinner, you're going to go with what's easy. And so the first like tip that I have for people to just get started with meal planning is to set aside a time every single week that you're going to do it. Now, you need to pick a time that is consistent. Sometimes that might be like 6 a.m. on a Sunday before church or whatever it looks like for your family. But whatever it can be that, can at least most of the time work for you is going to be the best bet for you because you can build a habit around it. Maybe you build it around something you're already doing. I remember when my husband and I started doing, we don't call them budget meetings, we call them money meetings because budget was like a bad word in my vocabulary. But we like centered it around something that we already knew was going to be happening every week. And then we added something fun into it too. So he loves to make coffee. So he would make us like lattes at home and we would sit down. The kids would have their audiobooks for an hour and we would just like dig into the money stuff. And so I think finding something like that where you're going to have 30 to 45 minutes of peace where you can try to dig into this and it will get easier over time. So that's the first step. Find a time that you can consistently do this. And the second tip within that, you're going to need two things to make that meal planning work for you. The first is your calendar, because you have to be able to look ahead and say, like, where are my crazy nights that I'm going to get home at 7 o'clock from football practice? And we literally cannot make a dinner at 7 o'clock to get the kids in bed by 8, right? You need to know what those days are so you can plan something like super ridiculously easy that night. And then the second thing, this is something you'll build up over time. I really love having a list of our family favorite meals. It's really tempting to just be like, I'll go to Pinterest or I'll go to Google and find something, but that takes a lot of time and it's mentally exhausting when, again, you're not used to doing this. So if you can over time start to build a list of recipes that your family loves, that you can at least pick one or two every week from, that is going to be a game changer for you. And then literally every time you make something new that your family's like, oh, this is so good, add it to the list. Bookmark it, put the link to the blog or wherever you found it, print it out if you have like a binder and you're more of a tactile person, but just start collecting those recipes because what's going to happen over time too, you're going to get more and more proficient at making those. So even if it's a 30-minute meal, let's say, you might be able to make it in 25 or 20 because you just know what you're doing once you've done it more than once.
So what has your personal journey been as a mom, 9, 7, and 3, active boys, from only cooking mac and cheese in your dorm kitchen to now you're cooking meals, creating recipes, helping other moms plan their menu, organize their life? What happened, Madison? What happened in there?
A lot of practice. Again, like cooking, it's another one of those muscles. And, sometimes I'll tell people like maybe what I meal planned in a week. I shared a video on Instagram a couple weeks ago that was like, here's what I prepped this weekend. And, you'd probably look at that list if you're not someone who cooks a lot and you're like, gosh, that's a lot of stuff that you made in like however long, 3 hours or whatever. But for me, because I've done it so many times, it's really fast for me to be like, okay, start this in the Instant Pot, start this in the air fryer, make this on the grill, whatever it looks like. It does all come down to the planning part. And sometimes the planning is literally just me writing on a whiteboard, like, here's what I'm going to do. But over time, I have just tried different things. I've made recipes that I'm like, that is too complicated. I do not like that. Or that doesn't fit our lifestyle. Kind of circling back to what I said about looking at your calendar, I think one of the things that has been essential for me is just being mindful of like, what is the timeline that I have? And I mean, trust me, my ideal world would be like a Saturday with nobody in my house where I could just cook and bake all day long. I know for other people, that's not how I would spend a Saturday alone. But the reality is that's not happening very often, right? Like typically I've got my kids running laps around me while I'm making dinner. Like that is my reality. But that also is like what I'm imagining when I'm sitting down to plan those meals. And so I'm not picking like some 5-star gourmet, 18-step recipe. I'm making taco bowls for the 15th time because that's what our family likes and it's easy for me to make. And I'm not going to be as stressed out during dinner time. So, kind of to answer your question, I'll circle back to, or just like round up what I said. Lots and lots of practice, lots and lots of relying on the same meals or the same types of meals to get more proficient and build that muscle. And then just being super, super mindful of like, what is my reality in this season? And let's not try to pretend that I can do something that I can't. I'm a very stubborn person by nature, so it's easy for me to be like, you say I can't do this, like no, I'm going to. But I've learned that that is just going to make me more frustrated. And if I can just be really honest with myself about what's real or what is realistic during that time, that's going to set me up for the most success.
Mm. Sometimes I feel like that can be a hard pill to swallow, though, because especially as a person who has struggled with habits, when I get inspired or motivated to start something, realistic expectations are out the window. It's I'm just going to do everything I can as fast as I can, as good as I can, and I'm going to succeed at it the first time. Otherwise, what's the point?
Hmm.
And then burnout comes as quickly as the motivation or inspiration got started. So how would you advise to another mom to pace herself or, ease into it?
Sure. And I think this is something I see a lot with healthy eating because healthy eating can feel very all or nothing, right? It's like I'm either doing it right and I'm doing it the best, or I am failing completely. And I will just say, like, that has not, well, I've certainly had that experience, but my long term experience has been when we go slow and we make incremental changes, that is what is going to stick. So, an example I always like to share is a couple years ago, my husband was really struggling with like gluten sensitivity, not celiac or anything like that. It just like didn't make him feel good. And so we just kind of cut out pasta and bread and things like that. I'm not saying that pasta and bread are bad, but in that example, it was making him feel sick. So we stopped eating it. And so what happened is now over time, like we don't really eat a lot of like pasta heavy dishes, or we make sourdough instead of, making like buying commercial bread. But that's a change that's happened like over time. And,
Mm,
for example, if I see a recipe that's like a pasta based recipe, I might know like, okay, well, I could switch that out with maybe a gluten free pasta, or I could do rice instead. And so, if I just focus on that one kind of healthy swap that I'm trying to make, then once that feels really like routine and like just normal to me, it's going to be a lot easier to be like, okay, here's the next thing that I want to maybe add in or change. I think a lot of healthy eating can feel like you're just eliminating a lot of stuff and like, oh, I can't eat this and I can't eat this and I can't eat this. But I really love to encourage people to like flip it the other way. And this helps with the habit building. Instead of being like, I can't eat all these things this week, well, where can you maybe add in one extra thing? Like, say, I want to eat extra vegetables. Okay, how can I add extra vegetables to the meals I'm already making to just like stretch kind of what I'm already doing and what feels like normal and like safe to me? How can I just expand that a little bit? And then once you feel good about that, you can add another thing and another thing. So instead of being like, I'm going from I'm eating out 7 days a week to I'm cooking every single meal at home, like let's maybe say, okay, if you're eating out 7 times a week, let's do six next week and you make one meal at home. And I know for the achievers out there, myself included, like that is really hard to hear because you're like, I want to make all the meals at home. But are you going to enjoy that process? And is that going to stick around as like a lifetime skill for you if you run yourself into the ground by making, 3 meals a day at home forever? Like it's just not sustainable and it's not fun. And if you want to be making this as a change, not only for you, but your whole family, it just truly has to be something that you can actually stick with long term.
yeah, that's such a good point. And all about the mind shift. And maybe, for people like me where it's all or nothing, right? You just switch it a little bit. I was like, gosh, if I would have just started with like every Monday instead of every day.
Hmm.
And then if I would have been like, man, I am killing this every Monday thing. Now I'm going to throw Wednesdays in there too. And just incrementally gone all in.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of things, in fact, I might just write this down later and, and apply it to my life. Are your boys in school?
No, they're
Like
homeschooled.
they're homeschooled. Okay.
Hmm.
So, but they have social activities and
Yep.
all of this. How have they, I don't want to say adapted to, but like when you take them places where the priorities are maybe not health food,
Hmm.
is it hard to get them to buy into the way that you cook things at home, or do they look forward to it now because it's what they're used to? What is that?
Yeah, it has been an interesting journey because especially, when my youngest or my oldest son was a baby, like I was a lot more particular about like I would make sure we'd bring our own dessert, for example. Like if we're going to a 2-year-old birthday party and there's going to be cupcakes and I don't want him having a cupcake, we were really strict on like no sugar for him for a long time. And, over the years, especially because I know what we're serving in our home is like my preference and what I think is like best for our family right now, it's easier for me to be a little bit more flexible when we're out and about. But my kids have started to understand and know like what is acceptable and what's not. Or I always like to frame it in this way for them, especially like what's going to make them feel their best versus what's not. I mentioned before we got on the call that they're at a summer camp this week, and we just got these, they're like a healthy cookie from Thrive Market, and like it's dye free, it's like sugar free, all the things, but it tastes really good. And they really wanted to bring that for snack. And I was like, well, my problem isn't the snack itself, it's the timing of it. Like if you go and take that to summer camp and you have those cookies in the middle of the morning, like you're going to crash and you're not going to feel good when we pick you up, and just all these things. And so it's a lot of conversations like that where I'm not just saying like, no, you can't have the cupcake. It's like, well, buddy, you just ate pizza for dinner. And so if you eat the cupcake too, like your belly's not going to feel very good. They've also experienced that happening for them in different scenarios. And so now that the older two, especially, they really understand like what feels good in their body and what doesn't. My oldest has some dairy sensitivity. He can do it, but he can't overdo it. So he can have a
Mm.
little bit, but if he goes too far, he knows his stomach's going to be upset. And so they've now gotten to the age and like maturity with it that they can sort of self-select like what they're going to be able to have. That being said, sometimes if it's like a more of a foreign situation, maybe it's like they go to a homeschool co-op, and so maybe it's a friend from there that I don't know super well, I don't really know how they eat, I might bring something that they're going to be excited to eat at the party. Maybe it's popcorn, or maybe it's like a special, we don't do a lot of packaged food either, so maybe it's like a packaged treat that I feel okay about. And so they can like get to be excited about having something different. But I think over time it's just been an education thing for them. It's talking a lot about it. It's making sure we're not demonizing food either, because that's a really important part of these sustainable habits for our kids. It's not that this food is good or bad. It's just maybe this is not going to make you feel your best, or, you know, this is what our family has decided that we're going to eat. But again, if I know that at home, 99% of our meals kind of fit into that box for us, it's going to be okay if they have something at a party that it doesn't fit in that box. And for me, I can't control that for them. And I also don't want to create like bad habits when they get to be adults, because they're going to become adults and have access to whatever they want. And so I want them to be able to make those choices when they're out of my house too, not just because I'm in control, in this season for them.
Yeah. Okay. So also, I didn't know that you homeschooled. So, how do you manage homeschool with the online business? Is it easy to get all in on homeschooling and kind of neglect the business? Is it easy to get all in on the business and kind of neglect the homeschool? What is that balance?
It is a balance for sure. And it's looked very different in every single season. I think like one misconception, and I'm sure you can relate to this with homeschooling, is like, I mean, I have people all the time be like, so are you going to homeschool them in high school? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, probably, but I have no idea, because I
Yeah.
have to go season by season.
Yeah.
And so, when I had my third son, we were really focused on just like being home together as a family, and our school looked very different than like maybe it does right now. Being in Arizona, we actually do more school in the summer because it's hot and we can't just like send the kids outside for 3 hours. And so like this is a season where I'm putting a little bit more emphasis on school time. But the one thing that I have learned, so I'm very much like a type B kind of mom. I am not super type A, but my kids and I really need structure, especially because we are trying to fit in so much into one day. We are fitting in school, we're fitting in a lot of cooking, we're fitting in work, maybe activities on certain days. So I have had to be very strict about, this is when we do our school, this is when I do my work, and there's flexibility and all of those things. But I've just learned that my nature is that I would just do nothing. And so if I want to be able to do both and do both well, I have to have a little bit of a structure and sort of force myself sometimes to like get started. Or sometimes it's even the cooking. It's like, well, I know we have drum lessons on Tuesday afternoons. And so if we're going to make dinner, I have to start on it during lunch or whatever it's going to look like for that day.
Yeah. And sometimes it just takes hearing it from someone else to be like, okay, yeah, I really need to do the same for myself. What do your boys help you in the kitchen at all? Do they,
They
or I guess, or do they approve or disapprove of your recipe creations?
So I'll tell you stories for both. So it's really funny. I think being home with my kids, especially from a very young age, they've just been in the kitchen with me. I am One of the like core beliefs I have as a mom is that it's not my job to entertain my kids. And I'm sure we could do an entire podcast episode on that. I probably just like triggered some people, but because of that, my kids are along with me for the things that I'm doing. It doesn't mean that they don't play with cars and Legos and Play-Doh and all those things, but a lot of our time is spent, doing things together, whether that's like working in the garden or running errands or in the kitchen. And my kids also pretty quickly realized like the fake stuff I was giving them to like pretend to mix together was not the actual food that we were eating. And so they really wanted to actually help. And so I just over the years, I have just tried to incorporate them. I actually have a video of my 3-year-old when he was probably 18 months, and he's actually like stirring the eggs in the pan for breakfast. And I mean, I have videos like that of all of my kids because they were just alongside. And I found for them, it's done two things. One, it's given us like a shared experience, which as a mom is just like so precious to me, like those bonding moments. But two, it's given them so much confidence. My 9-year-old pretty much, I would say like 3 days a week, he will just make breakfast for him and I in the morning before everyone else is awake. And he can make eggs and cut the sourdough and toast it and make sausage. Like he can do the whole thing. He's made dinner for our family before. And he's the one who's probably the least like, I don't know, cooking friend. I don't know. He's just not like that into cooking, but he has the confidence to do it when he wants to. And like coming from like a life skill perspective, like that is just awesome. So it's not that they're always with me or always in the kitchen cooking with me, but they do like to help. And I just try my best to let them help when they want to, because I know then when I need them to, and there's like, I'm trying to put out fires, not literally, but in the kitchen. And I'm like, we got to start rice and we got to do this and we got to do this. Like I can literally tell my 7-year-old, hey, will you start the rice for me in the Instant Pot? And he's like, I'm on it, mom. And they love that like sense of confidence and like responsibility. So then you asked, do they approve of my recipes? Most of the time, yes. I've had to have a conversation with them before, though. They've sometimes said, like, ugh, this is disgusting. And I'm like, okay, hold on a second. I need you to tell me if you actually think this is gross or you're just kind of being, a little bit, I don't even have a word that's nice right now. You're just being a turd. That's what I wanted to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Because like this is what I do for a living and I'm sharing these recipes with other people. So if you're saying it's disgusting, I need to make sure I'm not like telling other people to go make this for your kids. So typically it's just it's the other one. It's not that the meal's actually
Mhm.
gross. It's just it's different to them. But they each have different levels of pickiness or preferences. And we've worked through them over time. Like my middle child, he hates onions. I don't know why. So when we make something like a taco bowl, his has no onions. The rest of ours has onions. And that is, for me, a sacrifice I'm willing to make. I don't do it for every single meal, though. I'm also
Mhm.
not, when I'm sitting down to meal plan, I'm not going to pick 7 days of recipes with onions in it because I know like he's going to be like, Mom, onions again? Are you kidding me? And so, I think it's important to like work with our kids, but it's also important to help our kids stretch a little bit. And sometimes that means he might not eat dinner. He might just say, like, I don't want to eat this. I'm like, okay, bud, like that's your choice. I'm not going to force you to eat. I will never force my kids to eat what I put in front of them. But over time, he's gotten more willing to try things or willing to push the onions aside if they're in his bowl. And I think that's like, again, just another good like life lesson. I think there's so many just life lessons that come through food and that are going to like help set our kids up for success in adulthood.
I agree. And so, what would be some go-to recipes from your site that you'd be like, you know what, if you want to start here?
Sure. Like, did I have these on my site? There's a lot of recipes that I need to add to my site. One thing that my kids always love is any type of meatball. And meatballs are also just like so easy to make. I have found that when I cook them in the oven, I can cook them at like 400 for like 10 minutes. And like that is a huge win. I also love the tactile experience of like rolling the meatballs. You can use like a cookie scoop too, but I like to hand roll them. That's another thing. Like my toddler, he'll get in there and he'll form the meatballs. They don't usually look good. So I take them and I fix them, but he just loves to be able to do that. And it's like such a sensory experience. So we have like Greek meatballs, chicken meatballs, and we have Asian meatballs on our site. So I love all of those. We love tacos of all different varieties. And I feel like that's one thing, just kind of like as an aside, as a tip for people. If you have a recipe that you already like or a type of recipe like tacos, just switch up the protein or switch up the toppings. And all of a sudden now you have something new, but it's familiar enough to you as the cook and to your kids to be like, oh, we're having shrimp tacos tonight. That's kind of cool. That's different. And they're like excited to try it because it's got the familiarity of a taco. And then another thing we do a lot of are like skillets. So like a stir fry or a pizza skillet, Mexican skillet, which is kind of like a taco skillet with like peppers and onions and like salsa in it. Or we sometimes do like an egg roll in a bowl situation. So it's like a ground meat and cabbage mix and then like an Asian, like a sriracha mayo sauce on it. So those are kind of some of our go-tos that I feel like I can stretch a lot out of because they're easy to customize and tweak, but like the process of making that recipe is very similar.
Yeah. And so when moms go to your website, what are you hoping they will find or experience that you're providing for them?
I really just hope that when people come to Cook at Home Mom, that they, one, can find something that they're excited to try and make. There's a lot of, we love to use a lot of like toppings and like adding those extra veggies in there. And so a lot of the recipes, like they're just going to look vibrant and beautiful. And so hopefully your family will feel that way too when you serve it to them. They're going to be like, oh, this looks so yummy. That's one. And then two, just recipes that you can trust. I mean, we can't obviously get into this. This again could be a whole other podcast episode, but there is so much like AI creation of recipes right now
Mm.
in like on Pinterest, especially, but even on Google and Facebook, especially, is like insane how much just AI generated content there is. And I think it's really important to like find those food blogs that you know and trust and can rely on their recipes because those AI recipes, they oftentimes don't work. And I don't want you to have to waste your precious like budget on recipe ingredients making something that doesn't work. So hopefully people that come to the site, you know, they can find an easy, quick recipe that their family will love that they know is going to work too. Because these are the recipes that my family eats. Like that family favorite meal list that I was talking about, it's chocked full of recipes that are on our site or just ones that we'll be adding to the site over time. Because even though I love variety, like we have a busy schedule too. So I'm using the same recipes that are put, you know, on the website for other people to use as well. So that also means if I find something wrong with it, it's getting fixed right away. Like, because I don't want to have to remember next time I go to it that something is different. So yeah, hopefully those two things will happen if you just browse around. I designed the website to be very easy to just like, I like to say get lost in it because you're just like, oh, that looks good. Oh, that looks good. Oh, that looks good. So hopefully it's very easy for people to find something that just fits to their family.
What are some of like your favorite meals or recipes? Is it dinners that you create? Is it desserts? Like, what are you like? If I could spend more time making these, this is what
Definitely
it would be.
dinners. I've found,
Dinners.
yeah, I've just found that, you know, like breakfast, I do love breakfast, but breakfast is pretty easy to figure out, in my opinion. I think dinners is where people really crave the variety. It's where I crave the variety too. Like lunches, I do a lot of like just leftovers or things like that for lunch, or like maybe a salad with some, you know, leftover chicken or whatever. But dinners is, even though it's where you might have the most stress in your day because it's like you just got home from work or the kids just got home from school, I also have such a passion for bringing families together around the table for dinner. And I feel like that is the one time of day that most people can count on that like everybody's going to be home together. Maybe not every day, but hopefully a few times a week, you know, you're coming together and you can enjoy just a meal together, get to catch up on your day, just slow down from the busyness of the day too. I find that the dinner table just lends itself so well to that. So dinners are definitely like where my heart is right now.
When you say, passionate about bringing families around the table at mealtime, what have you noticed in your own household with your boys that creates or cultivates in your home?
Yeah, I really think it's the most, it's funny because we're all home all the time. Like my husband and I both work from home. My kids are homeschooled. Like, so you would think like, well, you're just getting all that like together quality time all the time, but that's just not how it works. And so for us, dinners really is the time for us to all come back together and say like, what did you do at summer camp today? Or my husband to ask me like, how was your podcast interview today? For my boys to be able to hear a little bit more about my work, you know, because my husband's asking me about it, or for him to share about things going on in his life. And I want to give another like aside practical tip about just this dinner time thing, because for a long time we struggled with like our kids wanting to like bring a toy to the table or bring a Lego or bring a book. And we would really be like, you can't bring that to the table. It's dinner time. And then I started to realize that what was more important, having them there at the table or like having a fight over them, having something at the table that was distracting them. And so I just say that as an aside because I know that there's parents listening that are just like, oh, it's such a pain to like get my kid to sit still. Well, like maybe you just need to let them have the Lego at the table. I'm not saying we should do like screens at the table or anything like that, but like if it's just a car for them to like drive back and forth while you and your husband get to catch up, like that's probably okay. But yeah, I think for my boys, it's really helped to just shape that kind of end of the night. We're all together as a family. We're going to go do bedtime together, all of that type of stuff. It's given them opportunities to open up and share about things that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise. And, kind of what I mentioned about just like slowing down as a family to be able to connect. The dinner table really just, it's been that anchor in our day, regardless of what else is happening in the day. We're always, I would say 99% of the time, we're going to end up having dinner together around the table.
You have touched on and uncovered so much in this episode, and part of it is like not just being healthy for the sake of being healthy, but because you're going to notice how you feel
Mm-hmm.
when you're doing it, right? And that's such an important lesson that we can teach to our kids, because how many of us grew up eating? I mean, how many of us grew up eating out all the time and always being sick, always feeling unwell and thinking that that was just normal and that it had nothing to do with what we were eating? You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? And mealtime around the table. I mean, all of these things like you're saying as it's normal, but it may not be normal for everybody.
Yeah.
and I think that, I mean, clearly along the line we have lost the importance of that, right? And so I just want to commend you for what you're doing and for what you're standing for and what you're putting out there, because these things are important and they're important to really bring back into the family structure and in home life as a whole. If you were to just encourage a mom who's starting out, maybe she gets that panic moment days before or after she finds out there's a big life change and she's not sure what to do with it. How would you encourage her to just stay the course, stay in those healthy habits, start developing those healthy habits, even though life may seem chaotic around her? What would you say to encourage that mama today?
Sure. Yeah, I think really just realizing that it's kind of has a multi-generational like impact even. Like the things that we're teaching our kids now, and I think this is hard as a mom. We typically want to do these good things for our kids, but something I have realized in my own journey, even very recently within the last couple of months, is like when I'm not fueling myself with good food, I'm also not like the best version of me and the best mom that I
Mm.
can be to my kids. And I think we really underestimate like how much food impacts everything that is going on in our lives. And so I really think even just unpacking like the why behind why you want to do this. And yes, it might be because you want your kids to be healthy, and that's great. But there's probably something even deeper than that. And maybe just anchoring like that why in not only just for your kids, but for their kids, or not only for your kids, but also for yourself. Maybe you choose to make some healthier choices for yourself, and that will model things for your kids. We weren't really doing a lot of salads recently, or like up until recently, and then I started like incorporating some more salads into just what I was eating. I wasn't going to push my family to do it, but I knew I needed it for me. And then all of a sudden my kids were like, "Oh, I want to have a salad with my dinner instead of like this chicken on rice or whatever." And I'm like, "Absolutely, like you're welcome to try it." And so I think we underestimate like that modeling for our kids. But just as encouragement, I would say start small. Find that one thing or that one night a week that you can make a different choice and build from there, and realize that you are building lifelong habits for yourself and for your kids. So you don't have to change everything overnight. Like it is okay to go slow, even though we want this overnight transformation of like, I was unhealthy and then I was healthy. But oftentimes the journey looks much different than that.
So good. How can we find you, subscribe to you, interact with you, all of the things?
Well, I want to share one other thing that I have coming up. I think it'll be timed really well with this episode going live. But in August, I'm actually going to be launching a meal prep membership site. I don't have an official name for it yet. I probably will by the time this comes out. But Within that membership, what I'm going to be doing is providing basically 2 weeks at a time of weeknight dinners for busy families. So it's going to be like exactly the meal plan that you can follow for that 2 week period. There's going to be variety in there. There's going to be simplicity in the recipes, knowing that you've got busy nights and things like that. And really, my hope is that it takes the guesswork out of it. We talked about like when you don't have a plan, it's hard to make the right choice. Well, this is the plan for you to make the right choice. It's going to be flexible enough that you can say, like, I don't want shrimp tacos, so I'm not going to have that, but maybe I'll add in something else, or we'll go out that night instead. But really, I want it to be sort of the blueprint for moms to be able to feed their families healthy weeknight dinners, because again, I think that's the time of day that's the most difficult to plan for. And so I'm going to take that guesswork out of it for you. So there will be all kinds of details about that on the show notes page that I will give you to link. If you go to cookathomemom.com/show, you'll be able to get a free 5-day meal plan to kind of get a sample of what that membership community is going to look like, and just be able to kind of implement those 5 easy, healthy weeknight dinners to your family. And then if you want to just go browse around the site, it's cookathomemom.com. And then what would mean the world to me is if you guys would come over and connect with me on Instagram, send me a message that you listened to this podcast episode, and I'm happy to troubleshoot like specific things, because I know every family is so different. And maybe your kid doesn't, he loves onions, but he hates peppers. Like, let's talk about it. Let's figure out how we can make some meals where we avoid those things our kids don't like. So that's Cook at Home Mom over on Instagram as well.
Madison, thank you so much. And yes, I would just encourage everybody to check the show notes. All that she has mentioned will be linked there. And it sounds like you're going to have to come back for a couple more episodes. We've got some things to unpack, right?
Yes, for sure. I'd be happy to. I opened some can of worms for sure.
Well, it's been a joy talking to you. And anytime you have a standing invitation to return to the motherhood experience.
Thank you so much, Val. It's been so much fun.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Motherhood Experience podcast. To join our exclusive TME community, head over to themotherhoodexperience.com/learn more. Be sure to follow The Motherhood Experience on Facebook or Instagram, and please leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment below, and we'll catch you next time.